Republicans in the Senate are worried about the economy and what will result from Donald Trump's trade war with China. Now, they're not only worried about the economy, they're worried about how the impact on the economy will impact their elections or their re-election campaigns. So a few of them are starting to push back against Donald Trump. They're doing so in a very meek way, if you ask me, but you can judge for yourselves because I'm about to give you the details. Now, according to Politico, which broke this story, Trump's tariff regime on Chinese, European, and North American imports have reduced economic growth and increased household costs. That's according to the Congressional Budget Office. So look, there's already that negative impact related to the tariffs and the trade war. There's also the Trump tax cuts, which did not result in wage increases for the average American. You have these giant bubbles, especially when it comes to corporate stock buybacks and how shares are artificially inflated. You have corporations taking out debt in order to do corporate stock buybacks. So, there's all sorts of stuff going on right now, but for the sake of this story, the Republican senators are worried about the trade war. So here's Pat Toomey, here's what he has to say. There's no question that trade uncertainty is contributing to the slowdown. We're in a very good place. The danger is, where are we going to be a year from now if concerns about trade continue to be an irritant to growth? Then you have Senator Ron Johnson, who said, the biggest risk to the economy is the whole trade situation. I think the president did a great job. We stopped doing the regulatory burden. We have a fairer tax system, and the whole trade war has injected a huge dose of uncertainty and instability. Also, Senator Rob Portman is urging the White House officials to develop an international coalition to isolate China, while Senator Steve Daines is traveling to China next week to discuss trade with the country's leaders. So they're, again, panicking, but on the surface, they're agreeable with Trump, toward Trump. They're just telling him like, you've done a great job with the economy, things are great, but this uncertainty could really destroy your re-election. In reality, they're really concerned about their political careers as well.
Yeah, well, there's two things they're concerned about. One is, hey, Trump, nice job on the tax cuts for our donors. We love that part. But now our donors are getting upset because the trade war is dampening their business. So they told me to come out and tweak you. Now, I can't yell at you because then you'll get a primary opponent against me and I'll lose. So I'm just tweaking you because my donors told me to. But the second part is also true, what Anna mentioned. Now they're looking around going, well, I got an election coming up and I thought it was safe, but maybe it's not so safe. And for guys like Toomey in Pennsylvania, it's not at all safe. So, and there's one other component to it. If the economy goes south, Trump's polling is right now between 36 and 40%. That's already miserable. And it's dragging down the Republican senators' polling as well. Now, if the economy crashes, oops, then Trump is totally screwed. So the Toomeys and the Johnsons of the world want to get out ahead of that and go, well, remember when I tweaked them earlier? I don't always agree with Trump. I mean, he's down to 25%. Did I say I was with Trump? No. As you'll notice, I said we shouldn't do the tariffs.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the beginning phases of their rehabilitation campaign, right? They want to rehabilitate
100%.
their image. I honestly think we're seeing it with former members of Trump's administration right now, today. We did the story of Jim Mattis and his book and how he's calling out Trump, but not quite because he's not calling him out by name. This is a way of them saying like, no, we pushed back when it was necessary. We disagreed when it was necessary, but really they didn't. And then even Marco Rubio, I mean, I think he's a prime example. Marco Rubio was humiliated by Donald Trump, but he has become one of Trump's yes men. So I want to go to graphic.
So sad.
It's
so wonderfully sad.
And here's what he had to say, and I want to push back against the statement that he gave Politico. Do I like tariffs as a matter of policy on any given day? No. What other alternatives do you have to rebalance what has now been 30 years of cheating, lying, stealing, and unfairness on behalf of the Chinese? So I want to stop there for a second because there is this narrative that goes completely unchallenged in the mainstream media. The narrative that China steals from us. They have stolen our intellectual property, which is why we need to hold them accountable. And to be fair, I made that mistake. I bought into that narrative. But there are people who know damn well how trade with China began, how these relationships were negotiated. And one of those concessions on the US side was, as long as you give us the cheap labor, we're gonna give you our intellectual property. And Richard Wolff does a really good job explaining this. I wanna just go to this clip where he breaks it down so people know why it is that China has this access to our intellectual property. Take a look.
The American companies, for example, came in and they asked for two things: a cheap labor force and access. And the Chinese said, fine, we'll give you the cheap labor and we'll give you the access. You've got to give us your technology. And you've got to give us help in getting access to your market so we can sell this stuff, which is in your interest because you're producing in China stuff you want to sell in the United States too, so we'll do that together. That's when the marriage, because that's really what it is, between China and Walmart develops. The two of them need each other, have for 35 years. There would be no Walmart of the sort we take for granted without the Chinese and vice versa. Because what Walmart did is give the Chinese an instant distribution network. Anything the Chinese could produce, Walmart would bring into every village and town, every suburban mall, everywhere. Fantastic deal. But that's why when you hear today, the Chinese are stealing our technology, that is nonsense. That's pure ideological bashing of China. A deal was struck. They got the technology, which they demanded, in exchange for the cheap labor and the access.
Yep. So a really interesting point by Richard Wolff. I want to say two last things here. A tariff is a tax, literally. It's just another word for tax. And so I read a story that at least $600 for every family in America in extra taxes because of the tariffs. And so they eventually get passed down to the consumers. There's theories that it's actually up to $1,200. But even if you take the lower number, what it is a regressive tax. So Trump gave a tax cut that 83% of it went to the top 1%. The tax increase went to you guys, went to the people who could least afford it. And that is Republican politics 101. And speaking of which, I thought all the Republicans on TV were saying Democrats are cheering for a recession and they want a recession. We wouldn't have one if it wasn't for that. No one else is really concerned about it. Well, here's many Republican senators saying they're really, really concerned about it.
Dude, Mick Mulvaney told Republican donors that it's likely there's gonna be a recession, a moderate recession. That is what he said. So look, it's an intimidation tactic, right? Republicans don't want you to publicly tell the truth about what's going on with the economy, and they try to intimidate truth tellers by saying that they want a recession. Trust me, no one wants a recession, but I think the American public should know about what's really going on while Trump gallivants around town bragging about how strong his economy supposedly is.
Like what you see? Click the subscribe button below and don't forget to ring the bell to never miss another video from the Young Turks.